Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's program, an elder law case from initial consult to funding, sponsored by ElderCounsel as well as the elder law section of the New York State Bar Association. Today's program will run from 11 a.m. to 11:30 a.m. And during the live webinar, participants are welcome to post questions using the Q&A tab in the Zoom portal. A PDF of the course materials are available in your learning dashboard, and instructions on how to access your learning dashboard are available in the greetings email you received earlier today. And at this time, I'd like to hand it over to our speaker for today, Jim Wolverton. Jim, it's all yours.
Thanks, Tara. I really appreciate it. Thank you, everybody, for being here. This course is called, or this webinar is called, An Elder Law Case from Initial Consult to Funding. And where I wanted to go with this is illustrate how a case kind of flows through an office. Because if I were learning a new practice area, or I was trying to figure out how to make this practice area profitable, it would really help me if I understood how a case flows through the office. So that's what I try to put together here today. As I was telling Tara before we started, I got a little ambitious with this, so I'm going to have to go pretty quick, but feel free to throw any questions up. I have that panel open so I can see those if those come through. Just as a quick introduction of who I am, my name is Jim Wolverton. I'm the Director of Education for ElderCounsel. ElderCounsel is a membership-based organization that supports elder law attorneys through education. We also have document assembly, a document assembly system called ElderDocs, and then we also provide marketing support. So basically a nice toolbox for the elder law attorneys across the country. So where I want to start today is the title is a little misleading, where I called it From Initial Consult to Funding. We're actually going to do pre-initial consultation. When I talk to a lot of attorneys, one of the problems they have in making elder law profitable is they don't have enough clients. And the way that you get clients is through marketing, and we'll talk a little bit about that. Then we'll do a nice process overview, a high-level overview of how to handle a proactive planning Medicaid case. The initial consult, we'll talk about the right fit meeting. Plan preparation, we'll use a tool called the Medicaid Asset Protection Letter. I'm highlighting tools that ElderCounsel provides just because that's what I'm most familiar with, but you could go out and create these tools on your own if that's something that you wanted to do. And I will highlight in the materials, I did give you the first page or couple pages of some of these documents so you can kind of see what they look like. Then we have the plan design with the Medicaid Asset Protection Trust, and then a signing meeting, and then funding. So that's kind of the life cycle of a proactive planning case in the Medicaid world. So just to kind of highlight what I'm talking about, when I'm saying proactive Medicaid planning, what I'm talking about is generally a client who comes in to talk about estate planning, and you are proactively having a conversation with them about the cost of long-term care and how that could jeopardize their estate planning goals. So basically the idea is if someone's spending $10,000 a month in a nursing home before they pass away, no matter how beautiful that estate plan is you created, there's no money left. So it doesn't matter. So we really need to get ahead of the long-term care costs. And with proactive planning, what we're doing is we're getting ahead of them by at least 5 years. And then hopefully we're coupling that with some sort of insurance product. So if someone does need to go into a nursing home or memory care or anything like that before they pass away, we have a plan in place and it's not a big crisis. And so that's what I'm talking about with proactive planning. And that's the type of case that we'll look at today. So I did want to hit on pre-initial consultation, just some things to think about. I'm not going to really get into these too deep, just based on time. I do have 42 slides to cover in 30 minutes, so we'll see how quickly we can do this. What I really want to focus on is what we're talking about is a stranger. We have somebody out in the community that doesn't know you, doesn't know what you do, might be getting a referral, or might just be searching the internet for solutions to their problem, AKA, I can't take care of mom anymore, or I need to do some estate planning. I'm thinking about, my estate plan. I'm thinking about long-term care, these types of things. They find your website, and that would be a digital marketing-based journey. But what we want to do is make sure that we've created an intentional journey for people in your community that don't know who you are or what you do to an initial consult. So we're starting out as a stranger, and the goal in the pre-initial consultation phase is to get them to sign up for an initial consultation. I'm highlighting two, a referral-based journey and a digital marketing-based journey. Obviously, within those, there's a lot of subcategories you could have. You could have a referral-based journey for financial planners and a different referral-based journey for a senior care, geriatric care planner or something like that. So obviously, this is kind of a simplistic view, but what I really want to highlight is have a plan and have a journey mapped out for those folks. So let's start with referral-based journey. This is obviously the best types of clients come from referrals. What we want to focus on here is identifying who your ideal client is, and then focus on who are the trusted professionals in your community that help that ideal client. And one way you can do that is hold workshops for professionals in your community. We've had a number of attorneys do really well with creating the types of, just come in, do little workshops, let's do a case study, and have a bunch of professionals come in and say, how would you, it's kind of like a leads group from your local, the business groups in the area, where let's do some case study, and how would you as a professional help these folks? That's been really a really nice way to get professionals engaged, and then everybody learns what each other can do to help that same client. When you're working with those professionals, once you educate them about what types of services and problems you solve, we want to give them the resources so they can share with their clients while they're talking you up. They can say, hey, look, Jim does, he can help you plan for the, the cost of long-term care. Here's some pamphlets and ebooks about that. Here's some case studies on clients that need help. Here's some white papers that you might find interesting. So you're arming those professionals, and what you're doing is you're giving them the tools to help build up your trust and credibility. And a lot of people tell me, a lot of attorneys are like, hey, I get most of my business through referrals, so I'm not real focused on my website. And I think that's a big error, because when someone's giving you a referral, what's the first thing someone's going to do? Is they're going to Google you and see, okay, is this a professional that I want to work with? And they already have an inherent trust. And if you have a bad website, all you're going to do is lose that trust. So you want to make sure that your website is up to date. Some things that people look at, really and focus on would be relevant blog posts and topics. So what I'm talking about here is you don't want to have your last blog post posted in 2019 and it's on a different topic. So we want to make sure that not only are your blog posts current and up to date, but they're also on, if you're trying to do proactive Medicaid planning, irrevocable trust, using a revocable trust versus an irrevocable trust, long-term care insurance, how to make sure that your nest egg is protected from the costs of nursing homes, things like that. And if you are serving multiple practice areas, what we've seen other attorneys do is use multiple websites for those different practice areas. And then make things really easy for people to understand. Again, we're building up trust and credibility through the website, because somebody has given a referral, they're going to go to your website. You don't want to lose that. Infographics, videos are an amazing way to create a relationship with people before you even meet them in person. Again, we want to make sure that we have a process for our referrals to get people over to us. We've had attorneys that use a different office number for referral sources. When the bat line rings, we drop what we do. We make sure that we answer that and get those people on the calendar right away. Another way you can do that, if you have financial advisors that work on the weekends and you're not in the office, maybe have a special link that they can directly set appointments on your calendar, and then give them an initial client questionnaire, just a 1 or 2 pager, so that you know who this person is and who's coming in. And then you and the referral source maybe can meet before the client comes in. You can better understand that family and their family situation. The digital-based marketing journey, that's a little bit different, because now we're just talking to folks that are finding you online. I really like this graphic because to me, it kind of illustrates what this looks like. We have strangers that are Googling things online. They find your blogs, your articles, they do keyword searches, they find your social media postings. Now they're on your website, now they're web visitors, and then they fill out a form and they become your leads. So that's kind of how the digital marketing based journey works, a little bit differently than referral based, because they don't already have that trust and credibility from working with one of their professionals. So with digital marketing, what you're trying to do with your digital presence is really empower those potential clients. You want to give them as much information as you can, and you're a source of information. They're confused, they don't know how to solve the problem, they're Googling these questions, they come to your website, holy cow, everything I need to know is right here. And that builds up trust and credibility. And you're building a lasting relationship with your audience with the more relevant content you have on your website. And you want it to be relevant and educational, and you can make it even entertaining. And remember, when you're writing this type of content, we're not writing a law review article, we're writing things that are digestible for people in your community. So tools that you can use there, obviously your website is key. Again, blogs, videos, and a really easy call to action. So on my website, if I have a blog, someone read it, if you want to learn more, please schedule an initial consult. And here is where you can schedule a 15-minute conversation right there off the website. Another tool, these are just tools that are based in digital marketing. I'm not going to go to all of them, but just remember that you want to use all of these with the same intentional journey. So you want everybody going in the same direction, usually to your website, usually to a call to action that says call the office, schedule an appointment right here on the website. social media, digital ads, email campaigns, and then even live webinars like what we're doing here today for folks in your community. This is a nice graphic. I think I included it in your materials just to kind of give a visual for folks that are visual learners on how everything is pushing. You can see here blogging, ad campaigns, email campaigns, events, social media, all going to the website. And the website is your place to let people know what you'd like them to do to book that initial consult. Okay, so that's kind of the pre-consultation that I always want to hit on to make sure that we understand how are we getting people to that initial consult. Now we'll get into the initial consult through funding. This is a process that we teach at ElderCounsel for proactive Medicaid planning cases. It's not the only way to do it. It is just an outline and a structure for folks that might not have a structure in place already. So this is not that no one chiseled this into stone tablets. You can take this and modify it any way that you want, but I'll hit on the highlights here that we teach. We use a right fit meeting rather than a really long initial consult, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. Then we'll get into plan preparation, then we'll do plan design, then we'll have a signing meeting, and then we'll obviously do funding. And so we'll talk about each one of these steps as we go through this. Again, I love visuals because it really helps me. I'm a visual learner. So hopefully this helps you all. Again, we have the right fit meeting, we have plan preparation, either in person or over the phone. Then we do plan design, then we have the signing meeting. And then however you want to do funding, we recommend that the law office does the funding just to make sure that it gets done successfully. We've all had clients come in with those really expensive binders, and then we say, okay, what's in this trust? And the client says, well, nothing, I just have this expensive binder. Don't I have a trust? So we recommend that the law office takes care of the funding. All right, so from the top, what's the right fit meeting? This is an approach to initial consults that a little bit different than what I was taught. And the idea here is to keep it time bound, so we're not having just a 3-hour hostage negotiation type initial consult. But our objectives in a right fit meeting is a little bit different than what it would be in kind of that traditional estate planning, really long plan design type initial consult. Our objectives in a right fit meeting is really, and this is on you, this is, you know, what's going to be key for your business, is get to know the prospect and decide if them and their family are people you want to work with. And I know we've all run into this situation where we're kind of chasing payroll for the month. We take on a case we probably shouldn't have. And guess what? We're stuck with that case for years. And I had an attorney tell me the best cases I ever had were the ones I didn't take. So that's what we're talking about, the right fit. Not only is it, are they a good fit to work with? Are they going to hire you as the attorney? Are you going to allow them to hire you to work with this family? You also want to explain your process so they understand what the process looks like, and you know when they're going to have to pay you, how much they're going to have to pay you for each step along the way. And then usually with proactive planning, not a lot of people are coming in saying, I need an intentionally defective grant or trust. What they're saying is, I want to protect my assets. I need to do some estate planning. So you might have to do a little bit more education with proactive planning and introduce some of the concepts of long-term care to the conversation. I did a previous webinar a couple weeks ago. If you want to take a look at that, I kind of go over some of the stats around long-term care and how important it is and how to have that conversation with folks. And the goal of the initial right fit meeting is to get hired what we call an ElderCounsel, a Medicaid Asset Protection Letter. And we'll talk about more about what that letter is, but that's it. We're just trying to get to the point where we're getting hired to do what's called an analysis letter. And internally at ElderCounsel, we call that a Medicaid Asset Protection Letter. So real simple, right fit meeting. The keys here to make this work is to create proper expectations for the prospect coming into the meeting.'re not giving away a lot of legal advice. This is, hey, you get to meet, and I'm just going to use myself as an example. You get to meet with Jim. It'll be an hour. We're gonna figure out if we can solve your problem. We don't know what your problem is yet. We need to have a bigger conversation and figure that out. We're gonna have a hard cap to the time of the meeting. We're gonna, usually with these types of meetings, we'll do 45 to an hour, and we're gonna stop at the end of that. We're gonna say, do you want to move forward? This is our first step in our process. We're not gonna give free legal advice. What we're going to do is we're gonna determine if it's the right fit to work together, and any legal solutions that we're offering, we're keeping at a very, very high level, and we're using stories to illustrate them. Other families that are in similar situations that we've helped, but we need to do the analysis letter as our first step. And that analysis letter is what we use to guide the rest of our planning. So that's the first step in getting hired. So getting hired, the scope of the retainer is to prepare that Medicaid Asset Protection Letter, that analysis letter. And then after you're hired and you've done the Medicaid Asset Protection Letter, once you're hired to do that, that's when we send out that big, robust questionnaire to the client. And then once that information is returned by the client, we get the letter together. Once we have the letter together, we have a subsequent meeting where we get the client back in the office and we review the letter together. And we go through all the recommendations that are in that letter. And then we decide whether or not the client decides what they want to move forward with. And then we have a second retainer to implement the plan. So when we get into plan preparation, this is when we're putting together that letter. We're getting the full questionnaire back. We're confirming all the financial documents are provided and current. We're discussing with the client who would serve in various roles when we need additional information. And this is, once we're hired, we're getting paid to do this type of work. Who are we getting account statements through? Who's our point person to be able to get these documents? Who are the powers of attorney? And how are we going to communicate with those financial institutions if we're not getting the documents that we need to put together our analysis letter? Because we want that letter to be really up to date. And even in our software, if you use our software to do it, it'll say what's the date of that statement. So we're all making sure that we're working off the same documents. The office drafts the Medicaid Asset Protection Letter. And again, clients review the letter, we have a second meeting, and then we have a second retainer, which is executed with the scope to prepare the documents to implement the agreed upon funding plan. This is what one of these letters looks like. I do have one in your materials. I'm not going to go through it in detail because you have this, and just based on our time situation, I want to make sure that we get through the presentation. But what this letter does is it goes through the client's income, it goes through their assets, it goes through any debts they have, and then it gives the opportunity to give legal recommendations of how the client, what you think the client should do to move forward. And if it makes sense to do, usually a combination of revocable trust, Medicaid Asset Protection Trust, which says irrevocable trust that we use within ElderCounsel to protect assets, and then hopefully some long-term care insurance. That's a really nice proactive planning plan. And you'll lay that out in the letter and say, this is why we think we should do this. This is what I think we should fund in the irrevocable trust. This is what I think we should leave out in the revocable trust. And then we move forward from there. So really nice letter that runs through that. And again, I don't really have time to run through all that because I want to do an overview of the plan, but that's the document, that's the work product that you're getting paid on that initial retainer. So let's say the client moves forward. We're doing a plan design meeting. The client says, okay, I'm going to follow your recommendations that are in this letter, sign that second retainer. Now we got to put the plan together. So now we'll sit down with the client and the attorney, and maybe your staff's in the room as well, to determine the trust design. And like I said earlier, what would be included here would be the Medicaid Asset Protection Trust. That's what we call it within ElderCounsel. That's a Medicaid irrevocable trust that's used to protect assets. A combination of that with a revocable living trust, any other additional estate planning documents. And within ElderCounsel, we have design sheets. And this is something I would definitely recommend you create in your office if you don't already have them. And that's a checklist for the client and you to work with to make sure that you're covering everything and you've communicated all issues and you're communicating those over to the drafting assistant. This is an example of the first page of what ours looks like for the Medicaid Asset Protection Trust. And this takes the place of that yellow pad of paper that the attorney scribbles on and hands off to a drafting assistant. And they come back and they have 100,000 questions because the attorney just wrote down some random words on there. This will kind of codify that so that you have a good workflow. You can hand this document off to the drafting assistant. The drafting assistant has everything they need to be able to put together that trust. So we're putting together, again, we're doing plan design. We've kind of designed the document, but we want to make sure that we know with the client and the attorney which roles everyone's playing. So we want to confirm who's serving as trustee, lifetime beneficiaries, who's the death beneficiaries, what type of distribution options do we want for death beneficiaries, who's funding, what are we leaving in the trust, what are we leaving out of the trust, and then who's responsible for funding the trust. So that's what we're doing on that second meeting once we're retained to put the plan together and really design this trust. We'll hit on the Medicaid Asset Protection Trust. This is the primary tool that you use in proactive planning. And this is an irrevocable trust that's specifically designed by ElderCounsel to hold property so that it's non-countable for Medicaid qualification purposes, and it's also sheltered from estate recovery. And the idea here is to fund this trust 5 years before the Medicaid application is submitted, because then it doesn't have to be disclosed on the application as property that was transferred within the look-back period. With this trust, the grantor loses all rights of control over the property under any circumstances, and that's to comply with federal law. So we're taking that property, we're moving it into the Medicaid Asset Protection Trust. We're waiting 5 years to apply for any sort of Medicaid benefits, and that way those assets are no longer considered available. Those are no longer counted when the client goes to apply for Medicaid benefits. So we want to draft the trust document in ElderDocs if you're using our ElderDocs program. And with that, you'll just make appropriate selections in the software. And what the software does, it'll then create a corresponding Word document. And in that document says what we call them. While you're drafting the document, it's also drafting a pour over will, certification of trust, trust summary, a funding letter and information for tax professionals. All these supporting documents are being drafted while you're drafting the trust in our software, which is pretty cool. This is just what our software looks like. Really straightforward, easy to use. It's a lot of drop-down menus and radio buttons that you hit. And then once you've finished that, you'll see there up on the left-hand side, it says I've finished that. It says progress 100%. On the left-hand side, I hit download and it creates a Word document that corresponds with the selections that I've made. So that's how our software works. Again, if you wanted to create your own software and create this letter, you could do that as well. This is just an example of what ours looks like. And these sample documents, again, are in your materials. So you can kind of just get a feel for what those look like. So we've put the letter together. We've gotten our trust drafted. We've gotten paid to do all this work. And again, usually in elder law, we're charging flat fees for each chunk of the work that's being done. So then we have the client come in and do a signing meeting. A lot of attorneys, for some reason, don't treat this as a big deal. I think it's a really good idea to treat this as a celebratory event. Have people come in, have champagne, have sparkling apple juice if they don't drink champagne, if they don't drink alcohol, and have them come in and really celebrate this because they have done proactive Medicaid planning. They have taken their estate planning to the next level that most Americans just don't do. So make sure that we're bringing people in, we're having a celebratory event, we're executing all the documents needed, including deeds if you're helping prepare those through the funding. So you want to make sure that you're getting everything signed as much as you can during that one meeting. So you don't have to have the client keep coming in and getting that done. And make sure that you've finalized any remaining questions about the asset transfer or beneficiary designation changes on any sort of life insurance, or if you're moving other types of assets over into ownership of the trust that have those designation changes on them that need to be made. So just make sure that you're thinking through everything that needs to get signed. Just because COVID's still around, make sure that you understand the New York remote document execution requirements. I know you guys have some great ones there. And then make sure that you've thought through your protocols for vaccinated and unvaccinated individuals. I'm just looking on the horizon of fall and I'm getting PTSD all over again. But just think through this. If you've probably already been through it a couple of winters now that we've been trying to figure this out. How are you going to handle these things outside versus inside versus mass versus remote execution? Just make sure that you've thought through all those issues that unfortunately have become very familiar to us over the last 2 years. Last thing I want to hit on is funding, because again, it is so important. I don't know how many times I had clients come in with those folders and nothing had been funded into the trust. So if you're doing this type of sophisticated planning, you're charging anywhere from $8,000 to $12,000 to do one of these plans. You want to make sure that your office is making sure that that plan is being implemented. So if you are doing the funding, we recommend funding the Medicaid Asset Protection Trust at one time and try to avoid funding in stages, because remember, what we're trying to do is get that look forward period in a Medicaid case started. So we want to get through the 5 years. So if we're doing, we're funding it in year one, and then we're funding more in year two and more in year three, but we're not really getting that 5-year look back period started. So we recommend, if you're doing this type of planning, moving assets over into the Medicaid Asset Protection Trust, that we're funding that all at once so we can get that 5-year timeline started. If the client is funding, if you don't want to deal with funding, and the law offices don't, because it can be really difficult to deal with financial institutions, make sure that you've prepared a detailed summary of the trust and instructions on how to fund the trust, how to title things into the Medicaid Asset Protection Trust. Usually that's the name of the trustee as trustee of the trust. And when we were doing them, we even have the date of the trust on there as well. If the attorney is funding, make sure that you understand how you're making money doing this. You're not losing money, and this doesn't become a money pit. Some attorneys will do hourly rates based on the asset. So they know that dealing with Bank of America, for example, can be a real pain. So they're going to do an hourly rate. Or do you just want to do a flat fee per asset transfer so you don't have to track your hourly rate? That's just something that you'll probably start doing it one way and might transition into another way as you get into this practice area. But just make sure that you're getting paid to do it is what I make sure that we hit on there. And prepare letters and powers of attorney. Unfortunately, sometimes each financial institution has their own that you have to fill out and make sure that your client's there, or they need your client on the phone. So make sure that you understand and you have a process for what are the hurdles that we're going to run into in getting access to these accounts and changing the designations on the account and changing the ownership of these accounts over to a trust. Do we have a process in place? Have we thought through this, and we thought through how we're not going to lose money funding the trust for our clients? All right, that was a lot, and I talked fast. If anybody has any questions, please pop those in the question and answer section now, and I'll make sure that I cover those. But hopefully that was helpful to kind of see how a case can flow from a stranger in the pre-initial consultation through a process in which you're getting paid each step along the way. So just in conclusion, to kind of hit some of those, what we really want to have is a repeatable example, so we can create the infrastructure for success when helping clients with this proactive planning. You don't have to follow our process. This is one that we've come up with. Our members have really liked having one in place to start with. This doesn't have to be how it's always going to be, but this is a good place to start. An initial consultation can be conducted without telling the client everything you know about Medicaid and trust planning. We do have attorneys that fight us on this, but believe us, you can get hired without doing a Black's Law thesis on the history of trust, and they don't have to be 3 hours long. Using that analysis letter, and what we call that within the ElderCounsel and Medicaid Asset Protection Letter, it is how that initial step in that attorney-client relationship can start, and it'll give you time to better understand the case and also build trust with your clients, because you're laying down what this looks like. If you have software, it can really help with your drafting. Obviously, I have an inherent interest in letting you know that, but I can't imagine drafting these from scratch. Signing ceremony should be a celebration of clients taking a positive proactive action. And then funding roles, make sure that you just understand who is doing the funding roles and they're clearly agreed upon before you move forward. So if you're interested in learning more about ElderCounsel, here's a nice link that'll take you to a landing page where you can schedule a meeting with one of our membership or membership advisors. We did have a couple questions pop in. Can we work remotely from another state? Absolutely. Just make sure that your clients understand that their expectations are set up, so they know, okay, we're going to do this over, what platform? Do you have a good, do you have good processes? How are you going to get documents executed? If you are working remotely from another state, you really just have to put a lot of thought into each step along the way. How am I going to have that initial consult with the client? How are they going to get that information? Are they computer literate? Do they know how to bring up Zoom? Things like that. So that is definitely, something that you want to think about each step along the way. Those signing requirements, you want to make sure that you know what those are. How are they going to execute your retainer? How are you taking payment? You can definitely do it. It just takes a lot more planning and practice. We have a lot of attorneys that do that, though, especially during COVID. They figured all that stuff out where they could do it. The second question is, what is the youngest age you suggest for irrevocable trusts, assuming the client is generally healthy? We get this question all the time, and I hesitate to answer it, because the younger you can talk to clients, the better, because that gives you a lot more options. So as opposed to putting an age on it, I would just make it part of my process anytime I was talking to a client, and just make sure that let them know, say, hey, even if it's someone that's, let's say, in their 40s and they're relatively healthy. I'm just using myself as an example. I'm 44. Hey, we can do your estate plan for you. Just to let you know, something that we specialize is long-term care as well. There is an insurance product out there called long-term care insurance. The younger you are, the cheaper it is, and the better type of insurance policy you can get. If you're interested in something like that, we can talk about it. So I would introduce these concepts to everyone that I talk to. But generally, if we have to put some parameters around it, I would say 50s is the earliest I would start having these conversations. And then later in, obviously you can go up from there. A lot of times when you're dealing with younger clients, talking about these things will make them start thinking about their parents. And that's really important too. So I wouldn't put a youngest age on there. I would just let people know what type of work you do and say, hey, do your parents need this type of planning? But plant these seeds in the mind. So as you're these folks' attorneys through the years, they're going to say, oh, okay, our planning goals have changed. Let's talk about long-term care. Remember, Audrey does that type of work. I want to make sure that we keep her in the loop and that we can update our plan accordingly. So I wouldn't necessarily put a age minimum on it. I would bring it up, let them know what you do, maybe do a quick high level overview of it so they know that you do it, and then bring it up every time they come in and you chat with them. Audrey also asked, what's the estimated price for the Medicaid analysis and initial letter? I'll give you some examples. It really is a big range, and it really depends on your community. And, you know, in New York City, you probably go up to $5,000. In some of the more rural areas, I've seen folks, you know, that are just getting started. They'll start at like $1,000 and then move their prices up as they get more comfortable with quoting their prices. But it really does depend on your community and what your client or your prospective clients will bear. But it's a great first step. It gets you in the door. It gets them trusting you. You're doing an analysis for the family, and then you can move on to some of those bigger planning once you've had that second retainer. All right, guys. Thank you guys so much for being here. It looks like I went a minute over. I'm sorry, Tara. I'll kick it back over to you if you want to wrap this baby up.
Thanks, Jim. This was a great program. So much information in 30 minutes. So thank you so much for doing this and being here today. And also thank you for the attendees for chiming in. So this does conclude the seminar, and I just want to thank you all again, and thank you for choosing New York State Bar Association programs. And I hope you all have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, everybody.